Great. We have a question. If I understand correctly, Strata is providing construction financing from investors to the developer. How much return does Strata make from the investment? We are not doing construction financing. We are owning the asset. It's a build to suit, which means we're picking up the asset uh, probably 3-4 months before it is completed. So it's definitely not construction financing. But at the same time, we are ensuring that the assets are bought early on and owned by you over a period of time. So all the assets which we acquired, that are all owned assets. We enjoy rental returns. We are not financing anybody at any point. Rent seems to be on the lower side as compared to the other rents in that area. Why are you signing at so low rates? So first, we don't sign any rents. It's the developers who sign. Our business is to acquire pre-leased assets, which means once the tenant is already entered is when we come. We don't negotiate. We are not developers. But at the same time, the rent, which is about 17.75, is on par with the market. In fact, the first property which we acquired was at 15. So clearly, the investors who invested at 15 rupees are already seeing close to about a 10 to 15% jump in value appreciation purely just out of the rentals of the other buildings are generating today, right? So once that tenant leaves, we'll be able to lease at higher rents, which means the investors who invested early on in our first 2-3 properties in the Hosur facility, are definitely seeing a massive upside from a return standpoint. And likewise, current investors would see in a year's time, because likewise, as we see more and more development happening in Hosur, the land price and everything else is only going to keep going up from there, wherever it is. We have a question from Mr. Webber. What is the meaning of 7+1 and N+1? So there is a small gestation of 1 year in terms of the entire building and everything around it. And there's a termination notice as well, which they need to give. So that is what it is. So technically, for all practical purposes, it is an 8-year lock-in, 8-year lease, 10-year lease, which you have pretty much on same lines to what the existing facility which we have built, just that it's going to be handed over a little later to them. And hence, from that regard, until then, the developer continues to pay rent to us. And then accordingly, our rent commencement. But escalations of rent is same for all the warehouses which we own for this one tenant itself. We have a question from Mr. Saroj. And at what frequency can be investment top-up can be done, and how can one exit the investment, and what is the maturity amount if one stays invested till lock-in? So I showed you the Excel sheet. You'll understand till the lock-in. You can always go play around in the tab, and you'll understand, what is the kind of return expectations, etc. is there. But you cannot keep topping up your investment unless somebody is looking at exiting. So once an opportunity is raised, we close it, and then we move on to another property, and then you can invest into another property. We almost bring an asset about 30 to 45 days. We are working towards making it much faster, but yeah, that's what we are doing at the moment. So that's going to be the frequency of assets. So accordingly, you can decide. Exit of any opportunities is purely at the hands of you as an investor. If majority say go ahead and sell it, then we go ahead in the market and sell it. Otherwise, we give you valuation reports through which you have a fair bit of an idea what is the value of the investments. Please note, real estate will not jump up 20-30% in a year's time. It takes time for a real estate to grow. It is a long-term investment. You have to stay invested for 3 to 5 years to enjoy the capital appreciation. If you're coming in for a 1 year, 2 year investment horizon, definitely not recommended for you to invest in our platform or any real estate for that matter, unless there's some kind of a secret information which you are aware of, because of which there's going to be massive appreciation, and you're well aware of that. Otherwise, no real estate grows at the pace, which certain of our investors in the past have told they expected 20-30% in terms of growth year on year. It doesn't work that way. Great. We have a question from Mr. Rahul. What type of income will this be for us? Rental or profit sharing from LLP? What about the taxation on a part? So it's not an LLP. We do a private limited company. You'll be getting CCDs. So whatever rents which we generate would be given to you in the form of interest on CCDs. So hence, from that regard, it's going to be treated as income from other sources to you and taxed at the marginal rate of tax for you as well. Great. We have a question from Mr. Govind. What's the SPV holding structure? Can I set off any interest I pay against this income? No, I don't think so. It's equivalent to you generating, let's say you invest in a bond or a fixed deposit, whatever interest you get, it is taxable. So you can't set off some other interest with this. Again, it depends subject to a subject. If you're investing from some company or a partnership firm, LLP, where you're claiming this as income and that as an expense, things can differ, but typically, you can't set off this is an income and your other interest income most likely should not, but again, depends on person to person, subject to how their business is. The individual can be a professional and things can be very different for them as well. Great. We have a question looks from Mr. Mitesh. The other opportunities were about 2100. This opportunity is about 2400 per square feet. Why is it more? Actually, in this particular thing, there's no mezzanine. It's purely carpet area which we're investing because this is a part of the office, etc., which we're investing into the thing. From a yield standpoint, both remain the same. There's no change from a yield standpoint. Just that there are certain other additional utility areas. A crèche area, etc., which we had acquired as a part of the entire thing. But overall, from the entire investment which we're making, it is the same return which we're making for all the investors. So the per square feet price might differ just because some is getting an office, some is not getting the office or whatever, but otherwise it is absolutely the same. The returns are the same. Everything else is absolutely the same. We have a question from Miss Mansi. What is the pre-booking offer till 20th November? Ma'am, so we are rents typically would start 2 months because of the rent-free period which the tenant has. Rents would typically start 2 months after we register the asset, and hence we are taking care of that 2 months by giving you a top-up. Two intents for that to ensure that you get monthly returns, which is what we've done for our opportunity 2 and 3 as well. But at the same time, the idea is to ensure we go and acquire faster and turn around fast, because that is what has been Strata's biggest strength, thanks to investors like y'all, where because we are able to take decisions fast and move forward, we're able to get the best of best assets because our turnaround time is very, very fast. So the whole idea of pre-booking is we can work together and get you much better assets over a period of time because of the speed of which we are able to close our assets. Great. We have a question from Mr. Raman. Sorry, Ms. Rupini. How old is your company? Have you had any successful final close post full tenure yet? I understand the interest is paid via quarterly coupons. Please confirm principal when eventually will exit. Right? What is the total fund size? What percentage will you invest? Lots of questions. Let me answer one by one. We are about 1.5 to 2 years old from a company. We manage 450 crores in AUM, the fastest growing real estate investment platform right now. We've not had any successful exit from any property because it's too early to exit. The first property was acquired about 14 months back, 15 months back. So definitely not an ideal time for us to exit, where real estate takes time for it to mature, and typically an investment for 3 to 5 years is what we typically look at staying invested in any other property. So too early for us to look at exiting, but if there's any good proposal we get for any of our properties at a very substantially high price, we would definitely recommend the investors that we should go out and liquidate one of our portfolio or two of our portfolio. End of the day, decision is the investors because they own the investment. It's their call. Interest which we pay is monthly, it's not quarterly. Whatever we generate is to be distributed to you on a month-on-month basis. Principal, when we eventually exit? Yes, you're right. Only when you eventually exit. This is real estate investment. It's not an asset financing or a kind of a construction financing product. This is you owning that property and getting the rents from the property. So you will get your principal only when you sell the property. You'll not get anything beyond that. This opportunity is about 3.6 odd crores. That's what it is. And we don't invest in any of our properties. We clearly see that as a big conflict, and we refrain from investing into any of the properties because we invested in one of them and multiple investors came back and said, hey, if tomorrow something goes wrong in the property, you might liquidate and I might not even know it. In spite of me, I can make a representation and say, no, I'll stick around till the end. We decided our job is to focus and be a good and a large asset manager for you, identify opportunities, ensure the properties are maintained very well, tenants are happy, and keep working towards exiting at the right time for you as investors. We at any given point of time don't want our interest over your interest at any given point of time, to keep it as neutral as possible. We are an asset manager. We'll continue being an asset manager and not invest in any of our properties. Great. We have a question from Mr. Banas. What's the return post management fees and other expenses? Do you help me with exit if I wish to, or is it post lock-in only? So no, it's completely at the hands of the investors. If the investors decide that after 3 to 4 years we all want to exit property, we can take a call and we can exit. We obviously work towards helping you in terms of exiting, but it's not as liquid as gold that you want the money today, it happens tomorrow. Typically about 6 months to 12 months can be a typical time when you may take for us to identify another investor. Otherwise, asset sale is one of the best ways to exit, where all of us can exit together. In terms of identifying what are the returns, would recommend you to please play around with the Excel sheet, and you'll get the entire return scenarios as well. Great. We have a question from Mr. Drumil. What happens to the asset at the end of the lease period if it's not renewed? So we work towards identifying another tenant and give the property to them on a long-term lease, right? So if the property is under tenanted, which one of the investors feel we are not getting the market price, what market is paying, we'll work towards getting the market rate for the investors with other tenants. There are multiple tenants who are looking for facilities. We'll do it. One of the best parts about these larger parks which we invest in is, there's a lot of other facilities which they get, and hence from that standpoint, there is a lot of other kind of value benefits which the tenant gets instead of a standalone park where he'll always come back and keep investing, or getting another tenant might always be very easy in comparison, right? So that is what we see from a return standpoint for ourselves. Great. I believe there are, from Mr. Ranade, I think there are some errors in the Excel sheet. I'll verify that, sir. Don't worry, and I will have that checked and updated in the Google Drive so that you can download and check it up as well. Great. We have a question from Mr. Pratyush Jain. How easy is it to liquidate one share? What is the average duration from one's point of interest sale to actual sale? Again, sir, it depends from asset to asset. Let's assume I'll give you a situation. You invested in a property with 3-year lock-in. At the end of 3 years, you come and decide to sell. You need to understand no one's going to buy your property at that time, because the other person say, hey, there's no lock-in. And how do I risk my entire investment? So there can be two bets. The existing who already invested with you would be more than happy to own more because they have comfort over the property, the tenant, etc. And they'll be your best bet. But otherwise, we'll need to wait for us to get another lock-in. Just keep yourself in the buyer shoe, which you are right now. You require a lock-in, you require a good yield, you require a good tenant. Likewise, if there's no renewal and there's a new tenant, or in between, let's say after 8 years when the lock-in is over, you decide to sell, no one's going to buy if there's only a 2-year lease period, right? So there are timelines in which we should sell, or we should hold till maturity and renew it, or find another tenant and then liquidate. That's when the maximum returns are generated for us as investors, right? So that is how commercial real estate works as well. Great. We have a question from Mr. Anup. Will the returns be affected if there are many other companies in your domain? So, I mean, at end of the day, you need to evaluate one very important thing when you look at investing in any platforms like ours, which are there in the market, is first who the investors who back such a property are, such a platform are. Again, brings corporate governance, bring confidence in you that this platform will stick around for long. What if it's a platform which perhaps just shuts down tomorrow? End of the day, you're not just buying the property, you're buying into the capability of us as asset managers to manage the entire property for you. So background, track record, very important for you to see, evaluate before you decide to invest. So, the kind of investors we've been able to get on board, and at the scale at which we've gone, and the kind of assets we have bought in, shows the testimony of the kind of portfolio we built for our clients, and we'll continue to keep building the same thing for our investors as well. Great. We have a question, Mr. Sridhar. Generally, how long easy after a few years in case you want to liquidate your funds? Again, repeating, this is a long-term investment. So you decide collectively as investors. We do a simple online poll. If investors say yes, go ahead and liquidate the investment, then we go in the market and liquidate. Typically, an asset of this size should not take more than 3 to 6 months to liquidate the entire property. And that is what you can look at from an investment return standpoint that we can do as well. But apart from that, I think we have facilitated about 14 to 15 odd sales in the last 2 quarters. Investors, because of certain liquidity reasons, because of the second wave, etc., did wanted to liquidate, and we have successfully generated liquidations for them by identifying investors who were looking at exiting, and identifying people who are looking at buying such particular properties. Great. We have a question, Mr. Pradesh. Can you please explain the idea of rental top-up and rental escalation 5% per annum on the opportunities freeze, or is it 15% 3 years? Current schedule of status of project, lease start period. Great, sir. I'll answer all your queries. Rental top-up is just for us to ensure you get rent from day one. The rent-free period is covered, and also for investors who can take their decision faster. It's an incentive for them to do, because there are many times an investor invests on the first day. the investors who invest on the 30th day, right? There has to be some incentive which we give to investors who commit early, and hence we do a top up for a week. For those investors who commit to a week, we give them that top up of 2 months of rents from our pocket, so that they are taken care of. Just a minute. I think I missed your other questions. Yeah. Great. Is there a cap on investment? Example, one investor can't have more than 10-15% of the asset, or does he have the sole right to exit? So our cap is 10%. Typically, we do not allow investors to own more than 10% in any property, and after that, there's no concern at all. We do not allow you to own. Again, there might be people who might have affiliates who may invest, but we keep a close eye and ensure that if not for anything, collective ownership cannot cross more than 25% at any given point of time. Great. We have a question from Ms. Mansi again. What if most of the investors want to exit? What about the interest of the remaining investors? Ma'am, if majority say yes, the majority is 3/4, 75% say yes, go ahead and sell it. They are taking a decision, obviously, after a lot of deliberation, etc. So if you're part of that 25% who says I don't, unfortunately, you would be forced, and we would be liquidating your investment, because that's what you're going to sign as part of the share subscription agreement with us, that if majority say yes, we will go ahead and liquidate your property. So this is something which is important for you to understand if you're a part of that group which is not keen to liquidate, but if majority decide, you would be liquidating as such. We have a question from Mr. Anup. To consider risk involved, under what options or conditions can this option cause low returns or loss for an investor? I think 3-4 things. We're investing not just for rental, we're investing for appreciation as well. What if the market gets stagnant? So that is one risk which is there, that there's no appreciation happening at all. Most likely that's not the case. Seeing the kind of development you're seeing and the kind of property prices raising in that area, you'll obviously see a lot of upside. But having said that, that can be a risk which can be there of market stagnation. Second, what if the tenant goes bankrupt, etc., whatever it is for that matter? So that can be another concern which can always be there. But it's a low risk. Again, it's very important the kind of tenants you choose and the properties you back accordingly. So hence, that is the second part as a risk which is there. And I think third is generally the economic risk itself, right? Like if there is a big downturn because of probably a third, fourth, fifth COVID, God knows what, a lot of things can differ and things can happen, right? So a lot of uncertainty can be there, which is a market risk where you'll not be the only person who'll have it. It'll be with everybody for that matter. We have a question from Mr. Ravi Sagar. What are the penalty clauses if the tenant exit early? They have to pay the rent till the lock-in. That is a crystal clear arrangement which we have for all our tenants in all our properties, no matter what it is. We have a question from Mr. Prudvi. Do you think a single complete asset sale is possible, given that many shareholders, and bringing them all in a single opinion is practically impossible? No, it is absolutely possible. It's completely all on the EGMs which we conduct, the number of people who come. If we get majority approval, we would go ahead and liquidate. Otherwise, there would be deemed acceptance provisions. In case they don't, then we do it. So that way, we ensure maximum returns are generated for investors. That is our core reason, and we'll continue to do it. But it's typically not a problem. We see in our Hosur site visit itself, when we get 60-62 people, it shows that people are, and it's a large investment for everybody. So obviously they would be inclined towards investment and taking calls when they want to exit, when they want to continue sticking around. We have a question from Mr. Pratyush. What is the average occupancy in warehouse in Hosur area? There's absolutely no warehouse in Hosur available except for these smaller 5,000-10,000 square feet facilities. Hence, warehouses need to be built, and tenants are flocking around. If we could do a 20-25 lakh square feet facility in less than a year's time, you can imagine the kind of demand. So occupancy is clearly chasing any kind of demand which is available in the market itself. Great. We have a question from Mr. Drumil. What happens if in case there's a default in rent payment due to unforeseen events? Again, if there's another pandemic, etc., we need to understand and be understanding we are here to support the tenant as well. We're not here to only generate returns, because the more we support during these times, they would stick around longer in your properties, and would obviously value what you did for them. 1 month rent is not going to make a big difference if in the event we have to agree on doing something like that. But having said that, we now take care of these COVID provisions, that in the event if there's a government lockdown, then you don't pay rent because you cannot access the property. But otherwise, if there's no government lockdown, the property is open, you have to start paying rents no matter what, right? So that is what are the current norms in the market, and something which we are broadly fine with, because we have to be understanding rather than be rigid to tenants as well, because it's a partnership for a long term rather than just a one-way road. We have a question from Mr. Umesh. Is performance fee applicable on 100% of the investors collectively? Yeah, absolutely. Even if you exit and if you hit the IRR targets, which we have put for you, which is close to about 16-17% IRR, highest in the market, which means unless you don't make that kind of returns, we would not charge. Whereas most of the other platforms are at about 8-10%, which means any appreciation you make, they will take away a performance fee. So we've kept it very high so that investors get the maximum returns for the risk reward what they're taking from the investment. What is the price identification mechanism? Could someone sell their share at whatever price if they want to have a desperate exit? Yes and no, in my opinion. We take valuation reports and it is there where clear benchmarking is done with respect to what the value of the assets are. And hence, if there's a desperate seller, it's a different situation. But there's no problem with respect to price identification, because we keep telling you from time to time what is the price. And it's backed by data again, based on what is the valuation reports which we get from JLL, who's the person we've tied up with, the company we've tied up with for all the valuation metrics, right? But you can't expect a 10 rupee thing for 20 to somebody. It is impossible, because to anybody, whoever it is, we would keep them aware of the valuations before they decide to invest. So it's very important to ensure that there's no mis-selling happening or some kind of a trading business which is happening for anybody as a parallel, and ensure the best of best interest is taken for every investor on our platform. So when will the first actual payment transfer date happen? Is it Feb 22? No, sir. For you as investor, it will be exactly 1 month after the date of registration. We are hopeful we'll register the asset by the end of the month, confidently. But in the event, if it spills over by December, by 1-2 weeks accordingly, so we'll get pro rata rent for the 2-3 weeks which is there in December, and the first payout would then eventually happen by the end of December, in the first week of January itself. That's a part of our top up. Otherwise, for investors, typically rent would come from Feb 22 as such. But top up investors who commit early before 20th would start generating ideally from next day of the property being registered. We have a question from Mr. Sai. How safe is this investment comparing to other investment products in the market? So it's backed by real estate. If you think real estate has a downside, then definitely you should not invest. But at the same time, you feel that no, this is a safe investment, my capital is safe, real estate might not crash, then this can be a great investment. So please understand your portfolio analysis yourself based on your capital requirements, and you should do it. This is only recommended. Any properties on a platform is recommended only for those investors who have a 4 to 5 year kind of an investment horizon, bare minimum. It's not a short-term product, and just not worth investing the money for the illiquidity risk and for the returns for such a short duration, right? So this is something which is very important for you to be well aware before you decide to take an investment call. Is Strata planning to use blockchain technology in future? When and how? We are working on it right now. Still very early days, in my opinion. But having said that, we would we are actively looking at that, and if there's any opportunity, we would love to implement it as well. We have a question from Mr. Jain again. What is the current warehousing demand in the next 3 to 5 years horizon? So right now, Bangalore is sitting on a demand which is about 7 to 8 million square feet with no supply. So that's the amount of money which is required for us to build. Likewise, other markets as well. So clearly, there is supply constrained market, and hence there's so much development which is happening, and for tenants to move. And also the huge movement from godowns to grade A warehouses is a huge thing which is also happening parallelly from a market standpoint. We have a question from Mr. Ashish. Do you have institutional investors? Yes, we do. We have Mayfield, Elevation, Kotak, Gruhas, which is a fund of Abhijit, and Nikhil Kamath of Zerodha, and multiple other very, very high reputed HNI angel investors on a platform who have that reputation of building large AMC businesses or running large real estate companies themselves. Great. We have a question from Chirag. Worst come in the long term, if Strata shuts down, what happens to my investors? Great question. We work with trustees. That's the core reason why we work, where the entire accounting, administration, rent collection, distribution is done by them. So the only thing if Strata shuts down is you might not get access to that dashboard as such. Worst come worst for that matter, but your investment is still safe because it's still completely controlled by a third-party agency, and we can always appoint another property manager or a JLL or CBRE, anybody, and work them to tell them to go ahead and liquidate the entire property for you, right? So having said that, there's no concern you may have that your money is getting stuck in the event we shut down from a company standpoint. Great. We have a question, Mr. Surendra. Any likelihood for Strata launching office properties in Metro? We are closing a couple of opportunities. We'll keep you informed very soon so that we can start building our investors their office portfolio as well. We are seeing companies returning back to offices very proactively, and hence from that standpoint, we are looking very aggressively to start investing back into offices as well. Okay. We have a question, Mr. Mukesh Singh. Do you create investors forum for each investment in case we want to interact? We do these site visits. That's what it is. Where now that there are offline events which are happening, we are planning to call all our investors once in an event where you can talk to each other, but at the same time get to meet us as well, right? I think almost 70-80% of investors haven't met, and we're very excited to meet you now that the markets are opening. And we would, and if you're vaccinated, would definitely want to meet you as well. Great. We have a question from Mr. Sanjay Michandani. In case you intend going for funding or IPO, will your clients, investors get benefit or options before others? IPO is too far-fetched, sir. I'll be very honest. We are just 1.5, 2 years old from a company standpoint. Yes, with the aspiration of growing faster, because there are there are assets in the market, and obviously our investors been very kind in terms of supporting us from the time to time and helping us build the portfolio for them. So we'll be excited to keep building for assets and keep bringing assets to our platform for investors for them to keep acquiring. But yes, if we do look at another round, we would definitely get in touch and give certain investors an access to participate into our company. We absolutely will be more than obliged and grateful if that is the case. We have a question from Ms. Divya. Is Strata planning for any warehouses in Bhiwandi? Yes, we are. As we speak, I'm in Bombay. We've been shortlisting, talking to a couple of people, and hopefully we should get something very soon and close and bring an asset for you on the platform. But yeah, as it keeps coming, we would keep notifying to you. I'll just take a couple of last questions. There are a lot more, but in the interest of time for everybody, I'll just take a couple of last questions. If you still have questions, write to us at hello@stratafront.com, and we would reach out to your investment manager itself. I'll just take last two questions from Mr. Nair. This is open for NRIs via the NRE accounts. Yes, you can invest from the NRE accounts, but you need to have an NRO account because we would distribute the interest, the rents in the form of interest to your NRO accounts only on a month-on-month basis. So it's very important for you to have an NRO account as well. We have a question from Mr. Paryushin. Is there meet planned before 20th November? No, there's no more site visits we're doing. We conducted once. We are not doing any more site visits. If we do, we would have you notified, and accordingly you can invest into. So you can come down and you can see your property investments, etc. Okay, I'll just take last question. Is there any projects you're planning to do in Hyderabad? Again, sir, our job is to identify opportunities. So we have a team in Hyderabad as well who's ideally actively looking for opportunities over there. And hence, if there's any opportunity which we finalize and close something, we would notify and bring it up on the platform for investors to invest as well, right? So that's what we would do. Okay, great. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. I hope this was quite helpful and answered all your queries. This is a part of our existing investment where a lot of our clients have invested close to about 113 odd crores in the same opportunity. It's just an extension, more of an office area, etc., which we are investing into as well. And hence, it's a part of an extension of an existing investment, so which we're excited about. We've registered those two assets. The property is near to completion, which updates we keep sharing to our investors from time to time. So any queries you have, feel free to reach out to your investment manager, or again, write to us at hello@strataprop.com. And, we would answer all your queries and ensure you can take your investment decisions much better as such. Until then, thank you so much everyone for joining in, and for all the investors who came for our site visit. It was overwhelming for us and for everyone at Strata here, because it gives us more confidence to the kind of work we're doing, and from the kind of feedback we hear from you, motivates us to continue keep doing what we're doing as such. So great. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great evening.